and you ask yourself, amidst this grayness, how do we navigate to really be in the light and remain a light? It's attention that I think probably that draws us to the discussion today. Hopefully, we will get nuggets and encouragement that amidst a dark cloud, there lies a silver lining. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, David, for sharing your thought on that. To those who are joining us, karibuni sana. We're just sharing if you to explain one word, our governance now in one word, which one would it be? So I think we could hear one or two more people in case you'd like to support why you gave your own thoughts of how your governance is. Any other one or two people who'd like to give it a shot?
Hello.
Hello, Jane.
Yeah, my name is Jane Guyai, and I'm the one who said it's wanting. And I think governance, I'm saying it's wanting because I think they're just out of touch with the reality of Kenyans and the people. And there has never been a time when so many people were so unhappy at the same time in one country as it is right now. So I think they are completely out of touch with the reality and the needs of people. So that's why I said they are wanting. Their governance is wanting.
Great. Thank you, Jane, for that thought, and good to hear your own thoughts about it. I think we could hear from the last one. One more. Just sharing. If you were to say what governance looks like in one word.
Out of focus.
Fantastic. Out of focus. Okay. Yeah, it's I think as I just look at these words, I almost relate with all of us as Kenyans. You know what we are saying: miserable, paradoxical, broken, dangerous, precarious, madness, misaligned. I was listening to I was just reading through a conversation in one of our national advocacy groups, and the issue today was, the issue of insecurity, and now the reality of what that means for us now. Do we need to be carrying guns, or is it even godly to do that? If the government cannot protect us, what does self-defense look like? I think it's just good to hear our thoughts and what we are feeling. I see Eric, you have unmuted. You could go ahead. Okay, I don't know whether Eric you can hear us and whether you're in a position to speak.
No, not now. Just go ahead.
All right, that's okay. And so, we're glad to be here, and I think we want to make the most of this session. So I think without much, I just want to introduce our speaker so that then we get right into it and hopefully have a very good and extended time of hearing, but also giving our thoughts and feedback at the end of the session. So we are so privileged to have Professor Tim Kiruhi sharing with us today. I'm sure many of us would know him. He's the Vice Chancellor of the International Leadership University. And so, yeah, we have interacted with him, and I am so excited about this session. So I think we can just put up our virtual claps if you're able to, and just welcome him so that then we have him share with us and learn as much as we can from him. So, Prof, karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you very much, Sharon. And thank you. Good evening. It's good to see many of us from different parts of the country. And also, I know a number of different organizations are represented here. Maybe we can help to mute Eric. Thank you to those from Hesabika, and I believe Sharon and also the board chair whom we get to work together with, Rachel Kitonyo, Devotsu, involved. I can see Dr. Homengari, the chair of KCPF, and others maybe from KCPF. I can see some from LNet. And also my colleagues at the International Leadership University. I think I can see DVC, Dr. Beatrice Amatijenga, Dr. Mutua, my wife, who happens to be my colleague too, Dr. Mary Mwangi, and others. So thank you very much. It's good to be together, Priscilla and others also that we are working with in the context of the Kenya National Prayer and Transformation Movement, which I'll describe a little bit. Dr. Ambassador Dr. Mary Kimulu, asanteni sana, all of you. It's difficult to go through everyone, so kindly do know you're appreciated. And I'm honored to be able to facilitate our time together. I will share my screen just to keep us guided on some thoughts, but I'll try to also make it as interactive as possible in the time that we have. Do know that there'll be some time later on to ask questions. So if you have some questions, you can put them maybe on the chat so that you don't forget at a certain point, and I will refer to them. As we've started, somebody can mute Eric. Yeah. As we've started, a number of us express a concern, maybe that's the lightest word, about the state of governance in our country. So I thought to put my thoughts in the positive spin of what can I do? First of all, can I help improve governance in our nation? If you happen to be from another nation, your nation. And I do believe it is possible, so I'll mention that, and I'll give some reasons why. And then what I've chosen to focus on is some hows, because I believe that all of us are concerned in one way or another, and would like to see improvement on a day like this one, especially that commemorates, of course, people who gave their lives and sacrificed 36 years ago to give us the freedoms we enjoy today. So some outcomes, I decided to kind of put some thoughts here. First is to ask, is there hope for change? I believe in a group this size, there may be some who are here, but really wondering, is it really possible to see change? Can I make a difference? Maybe in more spiritual terms, you could ask, why does God not seem to be as work today as he has been before? Maybe from what you've heard about our country. Maybe just to pause here for a moment, things have not always been this way. There was a point at which, especially, for those of us who are, of the faith, being a Christian meant a lot. My father tells me, who is now 93, that when they were younger, and part of what was called the East African Revival, when you went to a bank and say that you are you could be a Christian and be stealing at the same time, or not be a part of your word, and so on. So things have not always been this way, just to give us hope. And therefore, that's why partly I have hope that things can return or be better, as we choose to trust God with this situation. And secondly, we'll look at the biblical basis for engagement, because, we can have maybe doubts as to what we can do and so on. Contemporary examples may fail us, and so on. So I thought to appeal to God's word as the basis for our authority, and to give us confidence as well, because it's not an easy terrain. It is one that one must be willing to sacrifice for. So the biblical basis is important for us to get involved in governance. And some benchmarks, maybe some guidelines, rights and responsibilities in the community and the nation. What are some things that are Christian, our rights as citizens? What are some of our responsibilities? I thought I would appeal to a few just to guide us. And then some benefits of Christian leaders. And I'm assuming I decided to take it from a faith perspective, given the nature of the organizations that are here. There's some benefits of Christian leaders positively influencing their nation's governance, politics, advocacy, and even development. And then lastly, I thought I would also focus on beyond this webinar, because the goal is not just for us to engage tonight, but is to ask beyond today, what can we do? So to be inspired to influence your community and our nation's leadership through biblical values. So that's kind of what I'm hoping we can achieve in the time that we have, and I trust that this covers the broad spectrum of some of our expectations tonight. What is governance? I have a definition here. It's by Keman and Maluk, that governance denotes the relationship existing between the body of, it's not very good because it uses the word governance somewhere else, or government. This is, of course, we all understand government, the formal structures of administration, with its policy making and implementation activities, and the general public. The relationship between, maybe so to speak, those in power and the governed, so to speak, and those who are citizens, and and so on, or the leaders and the followers in the context of government. What are some characteristics of good governance? I borrowed some here. This is from the World Bank. And so many of these things we understand. I do not want to take a lot of time, but we say a nation or a community or an organization is well governed if you can find many of these parameters here. There's accountability, especially for those in power. They're not at liberty to do anything anyhow. There's transparency, openness, responsiveness. The voices of others matter. Equitable and inclusive, efficient and effective. Following the rule of law, there's predictability. You know what you can expect. It is not arbitrary, and so on. Participatory, there is a place for us to work together towards a common end, and then consensus oriented, seeking, that everyone would have a say, and then together we sense this is what, if in the context of a Christian, you'd say this is what God is leading us to do together. That is good governance. At least those are some, and you can see it cuts across the organizations. Then I thought maybe talk a bit about advocacy, because part of getting involved in trying to right the wrongs is part of that process of advocacy. Public support for recommendation of a particular course or policy. So, you'll be seeking public support, and you want to make a recommendation of a particular course or policy. Others would be to support for, to argue for, to call for, to push for, to press for, and so on. And there's an activity by, it can be an individual, or it can be a group, which aims to influence decisions. That word influence is critical. Influence decisions within political, economic, and social systems and institutions. And so lobbying is a form of advocacy where a direct approach is made to legislators because they are given the task of making laws for a country on an issue which plays a significant role in modern politics. But to go back to the previous example, again, just to show us how this has happened in the past. My wife and I were taking a walk earlier this afternoon, and we talked about the case of Elijah. She reminded me about that. And that Elijah, even though he was praying at a distance, could be able to influence what was happening in King Ahab's, palace. That is part of what, as a Christian, as a person of faith, that we have the opportunity to influence, not necessarily always directly, even through prayer. I wanted to talk about that. I know that prayer, is not as, respected today because sometimes, we use it as a cop-out and so on, but there's a place of the spiritual, in being able to influence even what happens at State House, in our context and so on. And then that's well within your role as a citizen, as an engaged, Kenyan, and so for those of us who are Kenyans. So briefly about the biblical basis for governance engagement. I'm sure if I asked you different examples, you would all be able to share. Maybe we can actually just to exercise our minds and so on after a long day. Most of you working from home today, being Sabasaba, and the fact that it was a bit of a lockdown. What are some biblical examples that you can think of? Believers who in their generation were engaged in matters governance, having given a bit of a definition there. What comes to mind? You can use the chat. Give us a minute to do that. Who are some believers or professionals, Christian leaders that are in their generation, even if it's in the Old Testament, were involved in influencing governance in their context? Because sometimes this is part of our challenge. We begin to feel like, hey, are we not stepping out of line Are we not going too far? Is this now not politics? And so on. I wanted us to be at home with the fact that, that we have many examples in scripture of people who are involved in influencing governance in their generation. Okay, I can see some charts here. Okay, Esther, yeah, thank you. Yeah, she was a person who feared God and saved her own people, the Jews, from extinction. Daniel, thank you. Daniel and Joseph, again, are exemplars. The prophets, Samuel, Daniel, Nehemiah, Ezra, okay. Nathan to David, yes, speaking truth to power when David had made a mistake. That was not an easy assignment, and so on. So there are many who we can talk about. Thank you for those ones. I thought about the prophets with the leaders of their day, and these names have been mentioned. I had mentioned Elijah before. In the book of Ezekiel, it talks about our role as watchmen, women, shepherds, whom God entrusts with his truth. John the Baptist with Herod. Now, this is part of the price to be paid. Speaking truth through power is not always going to be easy. You may need to be willing to pay a price. John the Baptist, you know that he paid the price of having his own head cut off because, the wife of Herod, or, the lady he was living with was not happy with that. Jesus on the authority of his day. Our own Lord Jesus Christ did not spare those who are in authority when they did wrong. You remember him telling, sending word to Herod, saying, go tell that fox, I'll do this today and tomorrow and that day, and so on. So Jesus is our own example. Paul before King Festus and other authorities, Agrippa and so on, and also, many other guidelines. So there is a place for guidance, to ask God for guidance and so on, but we see that it is not out of place. I hope that these examples encourage you and remind you that it is part of our faith responsibility is to get involved. What are some things that we can do? Maybe could be the issue, that some of us maybe desire to get involved, but maybe don't know where to get involved. First of all, for those of us who may be in some form of Christian leadership, our role is to equip or empower others to use their gifts for service. Many times we look to just a few people, and even when we think about the church's involvement, we tend to think about the church leaders, maybe the bishops and other leaders and so on. But their work is to equip us so that we can be able to use our gifts to influence, from Ephesians chapter 4. And so there are, there are those who can take roles in government, and that's okay. If God calls you to do that, that's where you want to influence from within. Of course, just be careful that your motivation is not power or money today and so on. But one can serve there. I have been privileged to serve as a chair of council appointed by the Minister for Education for two public universities. It was a delightful opportunity, and by the grace of God, maybe I can share that the last one that I chaired at the Raqqa University has persistently been number 2, but just a few weeks ago, it was rated as the best public university in the country. So I was very honored to have laid the foundation. I was a founding chair and served there for a period of 6 years, which spread over 7 years. To be able to do that. So I believe that there is a place for believers excelling and doing a good job, being a good role model, and of course, doing it right. Then there are others that have been set out in the context of our Constitution. I'll just use that as a framework because we work within the legal framework. So think about CDF as an example, and I've heard this, from an actual politician, that just when there is just one person who is doing right, when there is just one person of integrity, that CDF budget will be used properly. You don't even have to have the whole, the group, although that would be even better. Even just one person who refuses to sign off on corruption and so on. So part of what maybe the church should be engaging politicians now that they're going to be coming very soon to different church formations, is to say, give us positions because we believe we have equipped people of integrity who can serve on your CDF committee. That maybe should be what we should be bargaining for. There's nothing wrong with that. And so that you can have at least one. You can imagine if all the 290 constituencies have at least one believer, maybe 2 or 3, who are there to ensure that justice and righteousness are prevailing, you can be sure that, again, the funds will be put to good use. So the bursaries, they are meant to help the most vulnerable. And the bursaries are a Christian, they're very aligned to biblical examples of caring for the least in the society. God cares about that. Unfortunately, we all know that they are abused and so on. So if we can have Christians, again, to ensure that these bursaries are going to the most needy. And so, and there are ways to do that. We've been able to see that, in various contexts. Local authorities, so different, today there are municipalities and, townships and so on. All those structures that have been put in place. Some of them are not fully actualized, but at least we can begin to engage and to say that let's have the right structures to support us. I'll be giving an example from a national vision point of view, and also elective positions, vetting of candidates, and so on. So all of these are ways we can engage. Public participation is a very big window that our new constitution, now if I call it new from 2010, gives us to get involved. To put leaders to account, to make sure that budgets are passed properly and so on, but many times we don't engage. So in some ways, we have no right to be complaining when we don't engage. When you find that pencils or pens are being bought at thousands of shillings each, as you've been seeing in some of the budgets for the counties as they analyze them. But we were not there when the budgets were being passed, and those things were in the budget, but there were believers in those counties or contexts would never engage. And therefore now later on we complain, but really they passed under our watch and so on. Vetting, I've talked about it, and roles in public service. Could there be other things that we can engage in? Again, let's use a chart. This is not exhaustive. I just meant to give us a few examples to open our minds and hearts to the possibilities that exist in our context. What are some other things you can think of where believers could be engaged today, in the context of your nation, and most of us maybe will be Kenyans in the context of our nation? And thank you. There were additional comments made earlier about the biblical examples. Allow me, because of time, just to acknowledge them. Can you think of something else? Again, let's use the chat so that all of us have a chance to participate. Okay. I thought maybe for this benchmark, for the guidelines and so on, let me see whether this is an additional new point. Yes, leadership in families. Thank you very much. That's a basic unit of society. So when we do a good job, we help raise the kind of leaders that are needed in institutions, high schools, yes, serving on boards, management boards of primary schools and high schools, junior secondary schools now. And all of those, sometimes there's not much money that goes with it, but we can be able to make a difference when we, volunteer ourselves. And so on, if time allows, I could tell you a bit about, getting involved in trying to help raise the standards of primary education in my home constituency. And it is possible to see improvement over time, and so on. So using our pulpit, yes, to share. For those of us, yes, who have the pulpit, you can do that. And getting involved in policy making, even laws, as we saw earlier. We can get involved in passing a bill. I think many of us would know that, Sister Rachel Kitojo Devotsu was involved in, in developing a bill about tobacco use that basically, changed the public use of tobacco and so on, and all the issues that go along with it, all the negatives, and so on for the well-being of Kenyans. So we can be involved in lobbying for bills and so on. Thank you very much. These are some of them. So I want to just very briefly, maybe we don't, I wish we had time to get into small groups, but our time may not allow. But can you think of roles that church or religious leaders, Christian professionals have played in our nation? If so, which ones? Again, some of these could be historical, but maybe even contemporary ones. What contributions? Maybe this could be physical, social, emotional, spiritual, financial, academic, etc. Are Christians uniquely placed to contribute to? We pride in our country being 86% or so Christian. Of course, we don't see a lot of that impact in our day-to-day life. But what are some things that we could do or that Christians are uniquely placed to be able to contribute, in terms of, when you think about the governance space that we are in. And then what qualities are necessary in such leaders for them to be effective? We are not just going to be able to make an impact or imprint unless, of course, there are certain qualifications that we meet. And then which hindrances have kept us from being effective in the recent past? So these will be good discussions. Maybe you can take a screenshot of this and you can share it with a group around you as one of the ways you can take the lessons from today and share with others. But I'll allow you a few minutes to just contribute again on the chat so that as many as possible can just engage. You can feel free to speak to any one of the 4 points that I'm raising here. What are some examples, some guidelines that we have seen before that can encourage us as to this area of getting involved? Before I go to some practical examples, I'm just about to transition to some practical examples that you can work with. So feel free to respond, but also take this as a screenshot of this, and maybe you can be able to use this later, with others as well.
Hello.
Yes, we may not be able to have everybody speak. If you don't mind, maybe if you are able to use the chat, please. If I allow speaking, I know we have very few minutes. I just have 20-something minutes left. Will that be okay? All right. Yeah, let's use the chat, please, so that we can give everyone a chance. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. There are some good examples here, and that's why I'm happy to get to involve all of us. Yeah, so policy formulation, policy analysis, policy making. Thank you, Patience, for those ideas. Policy implementation. Not only the papers, but get involved in the implementation process. Okay, in season value-based leadership. Very good. Thank you, Sarah. And also Bishop Mana, Zeki, and Gitari. This is in the generation past. These were some church leaders who are very involved in holding the government to account in their day and so on. Then values-driven living. So our own lives should be an example. Yeah, so it's not right that, maybe where you be given a role as a Christian, people are questioning that and so on. Bishop Oginde at TSCC, yes, it's a contemporary example. Then getting involved in prayer. Kenyan Church Task Force was effective in the 2010 Constitution. Thank you very much, Roger Sodima, the chair of the Christian CEO Association. We need conflict mediation. Yes, that's a big part where we can play peace building and conflict, mediation, transformation. Reconciling political leaders. Yes, church leaders have played a big role there. Henry Okulu, thought leadership on church and state relations. Thank you. Okay, those that are accountable in the church to take elective positions. Yes, it is possible for us as well to take elective positions. We just need good preparation. Many times people get involved, but of course, assuming that it's going to be easy. It is not an easy place. And one must be prepared to pay the price of doing what is right. Participating in national conversations. Yes, if you have access to media, I respond a lot easily to media. It's not for pay, but it gives you a chance to influence the nation and the thinking and so on in many areas. Yes, not being humble, of course, is a constraint. Many times, maybe that has kept us from doing that. Reverend Timothy Njoya is another example, Dr. Timothy Njoya. So enforcement, participating in ensuring that there's enforcement of laws. We have very good laws, but they're not enforced. And then entrenching Economic Crimes Act in our Constitution. Okay, very good. That's another example. Thank you, the person using the admin line there and so on. So thank you very much. These are good examples. You can see there's a richness here, right here in the group. And if you could nurture what we have here, you can see we already have some very good examples, and there are others that are being added here. Civic education, yes, getting involved in that. I'll talk about that. So there's a bishop here, Kwampicha, in Marsabit, has played a big role in seeing restoration of peace in the northern region through disciple of young people using education. Thank you very much, Bana Okumu, for that example. And then Joe Kerago talks about living an example and psychosocial, I guess, education. maybe groups like EAK, ENCCK, and so on. Thank you very much. These are good examples of how we can be able to do that. And so, in the social front, like some of you have mentioned, there are contributions we can make, maybe very uniquely as Christians, the values foundation. We talked about family being the centerpiece for society. And so we can entrench values in the next generation, or generations for that matter, those of you who are privileged to be grandparents as well, and so on. Economic issues, that the right understanding of money and wealth and how to work, work ethic and so on. People like, William Wilberforce addressing things like slave trade. So all of these are things that Christians can uniquely make. In the political space, discipling of leaders. It's true, many people get into leadership, but they may be young in their faith or maybe not even have faith at all. And they need people to reach them and also maybe to help them stay on the straight and narrow. Vetting and accountability, teaching responsible citizenship, civic duties, we talked about those. And then morals. We should influence the national value system. Our challenge in Kenya is a broken value system. Our value system lacks morals and so on. And so that's why we are struggling. That's why, going to Singapore has been difficult because of our value system. And until we fix that, it doesn't matter how much effort we make, we cannot get to where we want to go. We have to change our value system and so on. So things like justice and sanctity of life, ethics, anti-corruption, and so on are the important values and so on. So this second part, I'd like to give you a few examples. By God's grace, I've been involved in a few of these, and there are many others, of course, but I'll try to give us just a few examples so that we can go away with encouragement that it is possible. So many of us, of course, know about the Vision 2030. We don't talk a lot about it these days. It's almost forgotten, but it's built on those three pillars. This was very, a passionate, a vision of President Mwai Kibaki, the late president, the third president. And so you remember it has those three pillars. So about the time that he was involved in launching it in 2008, this was just after the 2007, political violence in the country. And we were involved as a group in evaluating it. And we felt although it was very good, very sound, it lacked something fundamental. And that's a foundation. So it's like a house, so to speak, that lacked a foundation. And we felt that what was needed was a values foundation. We call it the moral foundations for Vision 2030. And we proposed this to government just to summarize the journey. And at first, of course, the gatekeepers were telling us we can't touch anything the president has already gazetted and so on. But eventually we managed to get it to President Kibaki. And he said that we had a point that there was something missing in the vision. And so we in the vision now, it was redefined to include, of course, the vision. The vision we proposed here was a God-fearing, just, and prosperous nation. And I believe even today, if we could return the fear of God, abductions and all the other problems we are seeing and goons would cease. A just and prosperous nation. Justice in terms of the use of our resources, theft and, public resources and wastage, and so on. And of course, a commitment to prospering everyone, not just a few, and so on. Then, of course, the moral values that we propose, just 5, that Kenyans would be God-fearing people. We will be humane in our dealings with one another, not the kind of things we did in 2007. Integrity, stewardship. We are not a poor country. Our problem is wastage and so on, and theft. If we could simply steward what we have enough to prosper this country. But of course, also patriotism, that we would care and love for our country, and that we're willing to sacrifice for it, and so on. So there are many things that we did there as a result of that. Of course, eventually it became 16, so you can even count them as 17 national values and principles of governance in the current constitution. But one of these requires the president to annually report to Parliament about what he is doing to implement values. We know that eventually when sometimes the address is given, they go on to all the other things about development and so on. But this is something on which a Kenyan can go to court and say that His Excellency the President has not been implementing national values. And we wanted to just do that so that there's an enforcement aspect, like somebody mentioned about enforcement. Of course, inclusion in Chapter 6 of the National Constitution on leadership and integrity as well, and other things that we've done in that space. Another example that I was involved in doing, and again, is just out of concern for our country, is wondering, is there something that can be done about corruption? So the one was an example in governance. This is about corruption, of course, which is the biggest setback that we all talk about. And so we did an evaluation. This was part of my doctoral work, and did a survey among CEOs of blue chip companies. And they said their biggest challenge around this time, the economy was struggling just because of post-election violence. But they say that their biggest challenge was not even, the high cost of money or capital for that matter. It was corruption. In fact, one of them estimated that there was a 30% markup of all the goods and services that were being procured or sold to Kenyans, had a 30% markup for corruption. So you can imagine that if we could simply be able to remove that, goods and services would go down, by 30%, of course, which would mean a better cost of living for Kenyans and so on. So as a result of that, eventually we formed ELNET, Ethical Leadership Network. And as a result of that, one of the things we've been involved in is identifying leaders and businesses who do things without corruption, just to change the mindset that every Kenyan is corrupt. Many people will tell you, oh, but this is Kenya, you can't get ahead unless you bribe or things like that. There are many people who don't do that. They just don't get them publicity through the media and so on. So there are Kenyans who are involved in that space. 22 so far, they call Kenyan leaders, and 18 businesses, and I'm sure soon there'll be more. We are reviving this program as ELNET. The other example I wanted to share is from my own institution, the International Leadership University. We have a mandate, that is not easy, but which we've given to ourselves, of developing leaders of integrity. That's not easy for a country like ours that believes in corruption, even, unfortunately, even sometimes among people of faith. But we believe it is possible again, and we've been seeing changes in that space. I could give many examples, but one of them is an MCA that came to us. There's our new campus at Kitengela. This is just a landscape architect's view of things. The grass is not yet that green, but soon it will be. Just planted it a few weeks ago, and so on. So that's our new campus where we hope to train more leaders of integrity. And so when he came to us, he was not even a person of faith and so on, and was a common, ordinary Kenyan. And I remember he was in one of my classes, and I would talk about, the fact that we can have, I was teaching a class on ethics and leadership. And so talked about the fact that, the only way to be, to sustain good leadership is do it the right way. So ethics is about doing things the right way, telling the truth, things like that. And you tell me, no, Mwalimu, I hear you. But in the space I'm in of court politics, you can't be telling people the truth all the time. Wananchi lazima wadanganywe kidogo, if can use Swahili here. Give them hope, false hope that things are going to be better, even though it's not the case and so on. But, I kept telling him, why if you do that, you lack, authenticity, you lack believability, you destroy trust, and so on. Anyway, he didn't change very much during that season. I'm just scrolling through a few other slides. Here's our programs. But, he didn't have to pass the course, because he engaged as an intellectual academic program and so on. But in another class, the class was focusing on legacy building. And in this class, he said, to the lecturer, I'm sorry, I don't have, I'm not cut out to give to others what I don't have. I don't believe, as a leader, I can really honestly be able to do this. It's a sad state of our politics today. Many times they'll tell you it's about you as a mwananchi. Very much it's about them. But to cut a long story short, this gentleman came to a place of personal faith outside of the class. The lecturer met him outside. They had a long discussion. And as a result of that, we've been very encouraged to see the changes in his life. His family was restored immediately. He has committed to living a life of integrity and ethics, not taking bribes, not giving bribes, and all those things that politicians do, and doing things with justice and righteousness. We believe it's possible, one leader at a time. We have many other leaders in our programs, especially our leadership programs. We have members of parliament and others involved in other spaces in public governance, but also others in private organizations, in churches and other groups, and various professionals. So we believe it is possible to raise leaders of integrity through all these programs that we have, from certificate to PhD, as you can see, in leadership, in theology, and also from certificate to master's in counseling. And we have new programs in the areas of ICT and soon business, and community development, and so on. We also have short courses. If any of you would like to take advantage of this, we are very happy to come and speak to your organizations, through a webinar like this one or in person, to be able to help influence things. Whatever we do, and this is what I wanted to show you, why I believe that it's possible to change, is because we focus on character. We believe that the strength of a leader is not just competence, which is the next point, but especially character. This is what will give you long-term sustainable source of leadership. And then, of course, competence, you still have to be the best in terms of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values, and also contextual relevance, a leader who is able to engage with the issues of the day and be able to bring change. So though it's challenging to pursue ethics, there is hope. And I gave two examples here. This is part of what ILU promotes, is also identifying leaders in society, ordinary Kenyans who are being ethical, who are being people of integrity, and promoting that. This particular one was a matatu driver, if you remember. His name is Basilio Kimani from Thika, who, some years ago, this 2021, was involved in seeing a student's, handbag and money, 20,000 shillings. None of us would have believed before that a matatu driver can be a person of integrity. But it took time to find the student, took 4 days. He lost some of his own incomes during those days while looking for a student. And we felt people like that need to be acknowledged. When we put this out, and eventually there was an article on the Saturday Standard, the editor actually called me and asked me, why were there so many clicks on this particular story? And I told him it's because it gives us hope that things can change, that things can get better, and so on. Another one, maybe another example here, is, of course, a policewoman. Again, I know that we all know the police for all the wrong things. Unfortunately, we all tend to think that all of them are bad people. There are some who are people of integrity. And this particular, policewoman, was working at Wilson Airport at the time. We remember the story of her finding $20,000, in different currencies, 2.4 million Kenyan shillings at the time. Would you be tempted if you found that kind of money and nobody else knew it? So again, the story came into the media. Many people told us, "Oh, these are the kind of people you appreciate and so on, or reward." And so during our graduation there in 2022, so we were able to offer her a scholarship to study at ILU. For Basilio, we offered him one for his children. He said he's not interested in going to school himself, but for one of his children, so that even though he would have made some money, we would like to, reward him with a lot more. He would have possibly made 40, 50,000 with that, maybe going back to the previous story, with that, laptop from a student and 20,000 shillings. But we have committed to give him a full scholarship that will be somewhere around 600,000 shillings for one of his children. So you can see that integrity pays. It is not easy. It pays in the long term. And there are people out there who are committed to doing the right thing, and so on. So, and it doesn't matter the background. But incidentally, both of these, Kimani and Waigoa, their last name would have betrayed them as people who cannot be trusted with money. But they are good people in every community, if you choose to be a person of integrity. The final one I wanted to give is an example of something that we are currently doing with Sharon, Christine, and Rachel, and a number of other people regarding a civic education drive that we are currently doing. And I wanted to share with you very briefly. Omeno Suji as well is part of it, and a number of others possibly who are here. And so we were invited to this by a group that already existed in partnership with EAK, Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. And so they already had this initiative that is called the Kenya National Prayer and Transformation Movement. And initially it was involved in prayer. You may remember the prayer caravans around the country and so on, which has its place. But we also felt we now needed a civic education arm to this so that it is prayer plus action. And so in our civic education space, we have 3 steps. We are encouraging people to think about the purpose, why we are involved in civic education or responsible citizenship, the process of good governance, and then the product that we want is good leadership, of course. And so we will not be able to go through all of it. We are going to be having civic education as trainings. If you'd like us to do one for your church or organization or network, We are very happy to do that. You can indicate that to Sharon, who is hosting us today, and we'll be able to come. And so things like, helping people understand that it is their civic responsibility. We need to be demanding good leadership. We need to use our power. Silence is consent. To act now to shape the future and to demand accountability. When we are silent, we basically are consenting. You know, there's those statement by Ed Back, all that is needed for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And I think the sin of Kenyans is silence. It is, which is basically consenting when we are seeing bad things happening, but we are afraid maybe to speak and so on. So anyway, so there are many things here that we can talk about in terms of how you can participate. Join a party to influence the nominations. You can be involved in vetting the leaders, using values. We have a process that we use, and we can show you how to do that, and so on. And on the election day, you can also be involved in voting, but also observing the vote. We are encouraging people that you have to be a registered observer, of course, otherwise they'll ask you to leave the voting station. But once you are registered, EAK is one of the bodies, I believe KCCB, NCCK, and others, among others. So you can be a registered observer and be able to spend your day there, yes, vote in the morning, spend the day doing your best to ensure that the vote is, has been done with integrity. And of course, beyond the vote, we want to get involved in holding leaders to account and so on. And also to participate in vetting the leaders and telling them especially what we want. Many times we wait for them to tell us what they want to do for us. They will come and promise all kinds of things, which they, of course, they don't even mean to do that. But when we involve ourselves, we are able to bring about that transformation. So these are just but a few examples that I wanted to give us to show us that it is possible to participate, possible to bring out change. It is not easy. One must be willing to pay the price. I'll insist on that. But once you sort out that, and for a Christian, I was telling a group the other day, for a Christian, once you've dealt with the fear of death, then there is nothing that people can threaten you with, and so on. So when I was involved in at the University of Nairobi, when I was the chairman of the council there, sometimes we disagree with the with the people that I was working with, and they had armed bodyguards. I didn't have any. But I had already, surrendered to the fact that I possibly could go home early, home to heaven, so to speak. When you are ready to do that, then you don't have to be afraid. And so I could stand up to what is right, even though it didn't please them, and so on. When I moved over to Tharaka University, I also participated in doing what's right. There are times that we would be told, oh, maybe there are certain orders from above. And I would say none of those during the time when I'm the leader there. When I was a chairman, I would not allow anything to happen that was not right. I was willing to resign or lose the position. More important, I was willing to die. When you have dealt with that, there is nothing that will threaten you, that will keep you from fulfilling your purpose. But I think too many of us love our lives here, so that becomes difficult. Well, beyond this webinar, because I'd like to wrap up, I would like to encourage you with this promise from God's word. This is God himself giving testimony. This is the story of the Tower of Babel. The Lord said, if as one people, speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Even though they're not even involved in a good project, so to speak. It was not God's design, but because of being united, that same language is being, a shared vision, a shared commitment. Whatever we plan to do when we are a small group united in purpose, nothing we plan to do will be impossible for us. That's what gives me confidence that Christians hold the key. The challenge of this country is not politicians. It is Christians who are not taking their place. It is you and me. In the first place, who puts those bad people in office? It is us who wake up early to go and vote for them. So if we can equally be involved in making things right, and we have God's power on our side, God's ability, and so on. So I'd like to challenge you. How far will your influence go? What have you committed yourself to do? Tonight, I encourage you to take our nation as part of your responsibility. We saw examples before of those who followed God in their season and how they were involved in influencing matters in their nation. And there are many spaces, there are many ways to do that, as I hopefully gave you some examples to do that will encourage you and so on. So get involved in making a difference and so on. I will make this presentation available later on, but I finished even a few minutes earlier. I think I'd like to turn it back to Sharon to maybe facilitate the question and answer time. Thank you very much. I hope that this has given you encouragement that it is possible to make a difference so long as you count the cost and you, of course, walk with God. So you don't do things in the flesh. It is not a physical fight. You do it in the spirit. You do it through God's power. And when God's power is on your side, nothing will be impossible for you. So let me pause here. Sharon, I will ask you to facilitate now the next part. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Prof. I think we can give him some virtual claps. Yes, I can see that. And thank you so much for sharing very practical examples and the reality of, when we don't do anything, then these things continue to thrive. You know what? I think it's Edmund Burke who says, the evils continue to thrive because we do nothing, but also the reality of the cost that we have to pay, that it's actually possible, but sometimes being able to stand for truth and live even a life of integrity, whether it's in your workplace or sometimes even in church. I mean, these things are everywhere. It requires more. There's a price to pay. And I think when you were sharing, I remembered my own story of some time ago, when I had an issue with the police, and when they arrest you, but then they want you to give something small. And the hassle of what that means. Either you go to the police or you have to spend a whole day, you waste a whole day. And friends, you'll not believe it, but I just decided the worst that can happen, as Prof has said, is death. So mine wasn't death. Mine was just spending a night in the remand, or a night or two, which, I mean, is still a cost to pay. But I think the reality that some of these things are expensive, but then it is worth the cost. It is worth the cost, and God gives us the grace and the strength to do that. So anyway, thank you so much for sharing. I think we can take any questions, thoughts, or reflections. I could also read a few from the chat box. I see patients saying we need to understand the systems better in order to recognize, navigate, and influence the complex systems. For us to have justice and reduce corruption, there is need of having mature leaders who can create a developing complexity in leadership identities, contextualization, and mindsets that uses knowledge, skills, abilities, identities, and mental responsibilities that will bring flexibility and effectively lead in variety of situations. Thank you so much, Patience, for that thought. Jesse, I see your request there. I'll respond to it. Okumu says, thank you so much, Prof. It's been a blessing hearing from you. The price to pay is real. Yes, a sobering reminder that we need to stop consenting by being silent. Yeah, consent is silence, as they say. And thank you from Ambassador. So I think I don't know whether there's anyone who has a question.
I could just maybe emphasize or underscore that the point there that they are making, that in this space of governance, because the country is governed by a constitution, so if you are going to influence, you must work within existing structures. I remember during that time when we were trying to define something about Vision 2030, we actually invited a Christian who was involved already in the Vision 2030 process. And we asked him, where are the gaps? What can Christians do that would help influence the state of our country? And so we were able to actually find out that actually in the design of that Vision 2030, there was actually something that was not finished. And they had said that this one would be done in consultation with faith leaders. And so on. So we knew that was a space to occupy. We could now go in and say, we are people of faith, and we are wanting to make this contribution. So I just wanted to emphasize that, yes, we don't just, in the context of governance, you have to work within existing frameworks because, and so on. So you have to look at the gaps and so on. That's why I mentioned some of those spaces. And I believe some of them we can negotiate as at the individual level, but also at the place of, doing it as a group, as a faith community, and so on. And so this is partly why we are doing the civic education, because maybe not everyone may know where to engage. But we are willing to come alongside you and, in your churches or other groups, other formations, and train you on how you can get involved. So please do not, that should not be an excuse now anymore that I don't know what to do, because we have a group willing to do it. We are not charging for it, except if it's out of Nairobi, maybe we'll ask you to facilitate transport and so on. Within the Greater Nairobi, I believe we'll be able to do it, with at no cost. So again, as I mentioned, maybe just share your contacts with Sharon. She'll be able to begin to help us to diarize that, and we'll be able to schedule when we can come and do a training. We'll ask you maybe to get together with a few other churches around you, maybe in a community, and so on. We believe that it is possible. I mean, we have Christians in every strand of society. So why are things going wrong? And we cannot just blame it on the politicians. There are just about 5,000 of them. Are you telling me Kenya is made up of almost 60 million good people, but just 5,000 bad politicians? Not really. It is all of us. It is all of us who need to participate. Yes, we know that we've given them power, and because you don't even hold them to account, they sound like they have a lot of power. But I can assure you that if we all begin to do what is right, the politicians are very smart people. They'll quickly align. They'll begin to speak our language. They'll begin to do what we want them to do. So the power is in your hands, is in our hands as Kenyans. We need to do our part. We need to get involved and so on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. And I agree. There's a question that I remember was asked when we were doing the civic education. Sisi ni wananchi ama wenye nchi? We are the employers of these people, ideally. So, like he's saying, it's 5,000, but then they seem to have more power than we do. So we are the owners of this country, quote unquote, or we are the people who have employed them. So wenye means we are taking responsibility and being able to question. And one of the things we are hoping to do actually with the civic education is looking at, beyond the campaign that's there of 1 term, 2 term, if we are to think of a people manifesto, what are the things we want as Kenyans? What are the things that if a leader comes to us with a manifesto, if you don't have these things, then, stop backbiting, because sometimes politics is this person has said, this person has not said. What would it look like if we are to keep our leaders accountable? Anyway, that's a story for another day. But I see Kenya asking, thank you for pinpointing out the issue of values. Do we need to go to primary schools? Maybe Sharon can share her contacts. Yes, I let me just do that here on the chat box. And
very good point. I think allow me to comment on Kenya's point. Thank you. Yes, the primary school is a good place, but more importantly, the family. There's a big research that was done by somebody called Avolio. He's one of the big names in leadership. And he said that, in his conclusion, that he puts it in a graphic statement. He says that it is what was not dealt with at home that is usually taken to school for the teachers to deal with. And it is what the teachers at school don't deal with that usually comes to the place of work that the supervisor or manager has to deal with. When you begin to see gaps in people and you are wondering, where did these people grow up? Where did they go to school? And so on. And then he says it is, of course, is a joke and training, where he says it is what the managers at work cannot handle that usually they send to trainers, hoping trainers can change these workers into better people. Anyway, but the point is, the home is a cradle. So the first place is families, not necessarily your own children. Some of us can host clubs for children every weekend, even if you don't have your own. You can just open your home where they can come. I mean, I see children in the estate where I live all the time, gathering around various interests and so on. So talk with the parents, establish a time when they can come, and we can begin to teach them, values, integrity, and so on. These children are very informed. they are being born with a cell phone in their hand, so information is not a problem, but they need to be guided on how to use that information responsibly and the right values to work with and so on. So I believe that that's a place we can begin. But yes, primary schools, I am told that, many times schools, and this is even within Nairobi, at times they don't have somebody to do the PPI session. When it is time for the people of the other faith, they always have an imam who will go and do their sessions. But unfortunately, Christians, and there will be many Christian churches around these primary schools, but we are also selfishly caught up with our own lives and struggles and so on, that none of us offers ourselves. So the PPI program could be one that you can offer yourself to the school nearby, find out whether because they give that 1 hour on a Friday morning, I believe, in every class. Again, a chance to model values and Christ-likeness and encourage these young children that they can become people. So they have lots of questions. I get involved in my home community, especially, and I get amazed, even by class 1 pupils. They understand many things. They know there are bad videos that children should not be watching at the shopping center and so on. And so you can begin to guide them from very early on and so on. So yeah, good ideas around the value system, because that's what is the problem. But better still, even later in life, although we know that, of course, we don't change as easily as we get older, it is never too late. So I'm currently involved in a number of small groups with leaders, working with some materials that talk about leader impact and among others, where we are trying to encourage ourselves, on a weekly basis to be people of values. At the International Leadership University, we actually encourage every student to be in small groups and to have a mentor, from one of the faculty members, because we recognize that yes, values are caught. Not even just taught, that they are caught as you spend time with people of like mind who can challenge you and so on. And we all need to work at having biblically based values as our foundation. So that's one of the benefits of coming to be with us. And by the way, feel free to reach out as well. I think I'll encourage maybe some of my colleagues, if Dr. Jenga, you're here, you can just post a number that can also somebody who would like to get to know more about the programs at ILU. I'll be filling in my duties, even in tell you that you can get also help to strengthen your biblical values, but also to clarify how you can make a difference as a Christian. You can get some training on that. And when you get the material, you'll also see my contact at the back. You are free to also reach out. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prof. I don't know whether we have any questions or thoughts, either through anyone can raise their hand. Or you could hear more from the chat box.
Thank you very much, Priscilla. Yeah, Priscilla is from the International Leadership University, and you can reach out to her and she'll be able to help you with any questions, any engagement with the university.
Okay, I see Suji and Sarah, so I think we could pick those two in that order. Suji, then Sarah, you can unmute.
Hello, did you say that we give the other person? This is Sarah. The other person came in first, so they can speak.
Suji, if you're able to, yes, please.
Actually, I had posted my question because thank you, Prof. Actually, first of all, just to appreciate you for that engagement. You realize that indeed time is very limited for people to give feedback. But you mentioned about the EAK, particularly people need to register as observers. And so what I asked is, have they already begun the registration of observers? But my second question was, because by the grace of God, I have acted as an observer in the elections, first for Focus, for 2 elections and 1 for EAK, and we write feedback, but unfortunately, I've never had an opportunity where either of the organization calls the observers together, either to give feedback on how the reports that we gave were impactful in any way in the process, in the electoral process, or other upcoming issues that comes after elections. And so sometimes you feel like, yes, you invested your time, you invested your money in making sure that you're in those spaces where you promised to be, but you don't even know whether you are making any impact by being there. How would we know what is the impact of what the observers do when they give the reports on, so that they can be encouraged to do the work of observers? And if they have started registering, then we can get the link for registrations. Thank you.
I can give a comment on that. Thank you very much. I don't believe they have started yet, because even for IEBC, the registration of observers will come a bit later. But I would encourage that we do a bit more than just observing alone. And this is where getting involved before in the electoral process is important. Influence things like nominations in the parties. For many regions of the country, nominations are the real elections. When people get in, whoever gets the popular vote in that party, usually they don't even campaign. The party kind of carries them and so on. But secondly, the vetting of candidates. I've shared this story with a few of you, so some of you may know the story, where I say that at the last two elections, I decided I'm not going to vote for somebody I don't know. If I was to ask many of you, you would agree that maybe you vote for MCAs you don't know because they just happen to be on the party that you decided, I'm going to vote for this party. And so you just tick their box, even though you don't even know their character. You don't know whether you're putting, sorry to say, a thief in the county assembly and so on, And what do we expect afterwards? So anyway, how can you do that? Very quick example. This is one of the ways, in addition to being an observer, I believe participating in this process is important. So I decided that I'm going to be involved in vetting the candidates around me, especially at the lowest level, which is the MCA level. So how do you do this? I simply worked with a Christian group around my home, in our estate, and we agreed that together, of course, I had to prepare them, and so they have some values. There is a process we use BVIP as the values that we use for vetting. We'll train you on these when we come for the civic education. And so because of that, we're able to begin the process of now preparing. Then I simply wondered, now, how do I get to these candidates? Because I'm not in their spaces. I simply went to one of the border riders, was one of the ideas I had, and I asked him, do you know how I can connect with these candidates who are running for MCA in our area? And one border rider gave me 16 names and contacts. So it's not difficult. You can get them. These border people tend to be the ones who work for them. So I simply wrote an SMS and I sent it to all these candidates. And I told them on a certain date which we had agreed with the Christian Fellowship, which is interdenominational in my neighborhood, we'll be vetting the candidates. And that was the last thing I needed to do. From there on, it was the candidates themselves pursuing me, calling me all the time, or their agents, ile mkutano bado iko, when is it again? See, I told them that we have 200 homes in the neighborhood. We estimated that maybe we could be somewhere around 600 votes. And for an MCA, do those matter? Even for an MP? Yes. There are many people who lose positions or even a governor, because they can't get 600 votes. So once they know that you hold that, they will pursue you, and so on. So, but we prepared. We decided that the event will be free of money, so that people don't wonder who is sponsoring that. So we told everybody to come to a central place with their own chair. We're not even going to provide those, but we simply wanted to be able to interact with the candidates. They showed up. One of them even showed up with their, speaker system. And I had to ask the other candidates whether they were willing for us to use the loudspeaker system, because of course it was branded, and they said it's not a problem. So we used it to speak to everybody in the community. At the end of that time, we asked, of course, questions around issues of integrity and values, their motivation for going into leadership, things like that. At the end of that time, and we've done this twice, I felt I clearly knew who to vote for, who comes closest to the values that I hold. as a voter, as a Christian voter. And so I've had the freedom of conscience that I'm voting for the right person. So I'm not bound personally by political parties. I can vote for there are good candidates in UDA, there are good candidates in ODM, there are good candidates in DCP, there are good candidates in Ford or whatever party. Linda Mwananchi, it doesn't matter the formation. We know that these are the same people anyway. So I'll go look for the right person at different levels, the one who comes closest to the values and so on. Well, let me tell you what happened as a result of this. So I didn't, vote for the popular candidate. I could tell who had maybe a big following, but I didn't feel his value system agreed with mine. So I didn't vote for him. But that evening, he called me and told me, oh, I want to thank you. It looks like I'm going to be winning. And I even see that in the polling station near your home, I can see that there are a number of people who voted for me. So thank you for mobilizing them. I couldn't tell him that I didn't vote for him personally, but he believed I was able to influence. Furthermore, anytime I called him after that, for the whole 5 years he was in office, he would quickly pick my calls. He would not even let my phone ring more than 3 times because he believed I could influence something. Can you imagine what would happen if each one of us here who is here tonight, who are about 100 of us, influenced the votes were near where we are? I believe we can again influence these leaders and hold them to account. One of the candidates did not win in the first round. And he approached me and told me, it looks like you understand these matters of governance. Would it be okay for me to ask you to be my mentor? So I told him I was not a politician, but I could help him to be a good leader, that I was willing to do. And so for the 5 years, I continued to meet with him. In the last election, this gentleman became now the new MCA. The other one, unfortunately, because of his value system, did not make it, even though he had maybe a bit more money and so on. So the current MCA then, holds himself every once in a while. He asks me to meet with him and to hold him accountable. So this is what we can do. And you can imagine if each one of us did that in our spaces, we can then have a county assembly, in our counties or whatever other spaces that really reflects the values that we are in. That's why I said our challenge is ourselves as Christians. We can do a lot more. We are not doing enough. And I believe we can have influence and so on. So it is in addition to the voter, observation and so on. I believe the combination of these things will make a big difference. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Prof. I think we are now winding up. I think so. I'll just share a few thoughts with us, even as we near the close of the meeting. So, as Prof mentioned, we are hoping to roll out the civic education as part of the Kenya National and Prayer and Transformation Movement, and we are hoping to do this in the counties, having county representatives and then ward representatives. And so we'll be doing this, and I think more communication will be given to us. But we also have one of our partners. There are 2 links that I have shared. One is the Kenya National Prayer and Transformation Movement. A part of the material that we are building, you can find it on that website, including the roles of the different people, whether the governors, the MPs, the senators, you can find part of that there. But also one of our other partners that we are working with, the Wajibu Wetu, they have a history. If you want to see a track record of a certain MP or a certain leader, even as you consider voting for them in the next election, you can find that there. Beyond that, we are glad that we were also able to plan for this. As part of what we do in Hesabika, we engage in advocacy, and we engage right now in 5 different areas, 5 main areas. One is issues of governance and civic education. The other one is aspects of the economy. If you're burdened around issues of our economy and our budgets or influencing that sphere. Then 3, if your area is education, anything education. Then 4 is if your area is health, issues of health. And then finally, if you are in pastoral ministry or you're just a believer who's interested on issues of public theology and formation, those are our areas. So I'd like to just, a link will be shared and you're invited to participate and join in any of those caucuses if you feel you're able to contribute and you feel that's a burden that the Lord has called you to. Those are the 5 areas that we'll be engaging with. So I think, I don't know whether my teammate Abere is here, could help me share the link. More details will be shared concerning civic education, but if you either have a church, a congregation, a community where you'd want us to come and engage on matters of civic education, you can reach out to me. There's also a contact via the Kenya National Prayer and Transformation Movement. You can reach out to us there. I think at this point, now that we are closing, I just want to acknowledge our partners, KCPF and CITAM. Maybe I can request a representative from KCPF. I don't know whether Dr. Wahome Ngari, you could say hi to us. I don't know whether you're still in. He could say hi to us, or maybe Lizanne can also say hi to us as one of our partners, and then a representative from CITAM, and then I think we can close.
Hi everyone. Hi Sharon. It's a wonderful conversation that we've had this evening, and I'm quite grateful to Professor Tim, and looking forward to having these conversations more and more, and also being able to bring this to churches and also our communities. Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I think we could, I don't know whether there's a representative from CITAM. I don't know whether Sheila is in.
Judy.
Welcome, Judy. Great. So
I think she has left.
That's
if Judy is not in, I can come in on behalf of CITAM.
That's okay, Sarah.
Yeah, we serve together in the Missions and Social Action Department. And just to appreciate this forum, maybe I can use the opportunity to just share. For example, in the last elections, I worked with 5 candidates from who are coming from the church I was pastoring then, worked with them before to particularly provide for them a forum to exchange the experiences they are having on the ground, and to be able to pray with them. But I thought what we did, which was beyond, was after the elections, there is a lot of woundedness that happens, particularly to the candidates that they don't win, those who don't win, especially after investing so much of some of them, their family resources, and giving such people an opportunity for you to continue to work with them to bring healing, to at least ensure that they are stable psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. They will continue to serve God and to carry forth the vision of leadership that they had, but also to learn from their lessons. I think those are some of the things I did just to take the responsibility of making sure that we are raising leaders who can stand up for the Lord and who are accountable. But also, I think the other need was financial support for particularly the Christian leaders if they are going to be in that space, and just being in some of their groups where they were raising resources. I think that's also something we may need to ask ourselves as the church. We ask that we are sending leaders there, but how do we support them? Because sometimes it's very expensive, not really for giving people the money, but even transport to move from one village to the other or from one area to another. So sometimes just getting petrol station, I think petrol for some of them to be able to move from one place to another as they sell themselves. And even if they didn't win, I still felt I had made the contribution that I would make as a Kenyan citizen who is looking for accountable leadership. Otherwise, thank you for these platforms, and we pray that God continues to increase your the area of influence and the reachability that we can be able to reach more people. Thank you, and God bless you.
Great, thank you so much, Sarah, and we are glad that you're able to speak, and thank you so much, everyone, for making it to today's meeting. We are glad that you are able to participate. I have shared the link to the Hesabika National Advocacy Group there, so if you'd like to participate and engage more, please feel free to join the group. And once again, we are grateful that you are able to join. We'll be sharing the link, hopefully for the recording and the notes there. So yeah, and I think at this point I can just invite a volunteer to close for us. But I see Francis Parsiwe, we have been with him in the Civic Education Caucus and the material. Maybe I could invite you to close for us, maybe say something and then close for us with a word of prayer. Francis, I don't know whether you're in a position to speak.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear
Hello,
you.
good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Am I audible so that I can pray?
Yes, you are.
Okay, let's pray. Let's pray then. Father, in the
I think we lost Francis, but we hope he has prayed for us and has closed for us well. So allow me.
He's muted.
I think Francis is having some network challenges, but we are glad and we hope he's prayed for us. So thank you once again for joining and for making it today. May the Lord bless you, and I hope that you're able to continue making an impact where you are in whichever space. So allow me to release us. This is just 2 minutes to the top of the hour. Thanks again, and I wish you all a lovely night. Yeah, and let's see you in the next webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Shalom. God bless you.
Good night.
For too long, we have been concerned, but time has come to stand up and be counted. We'll translate concerns into actions. As salt and light, we must be felt. Sing it there. Take our place. Take our place. Nehemiahs of today. We will rebuild the broken places by your grace, by your grace. The price, testimony to save the land.
Nitahesabika, nitasimama, nitachukua hatua, nitahesabika, sitanyamaza, nitahesabika.
Sons of love, arise and take your place.
Take your place.
Unity,
in unity,
and
integrity.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Do not give in.
Until this land
Till this land
is healed and free.
Nitasimama, nitahesabika, sitanyamaza, nitahesabika, nitahesabika, nitasimama, nitachukua hatua, nitahesabika, sitanyamaza mie, nitasimama. Come on, help me say, oh, yeah, yeah. I will stand to be counted, 'cause God is my strength. Because God enables me, nitasimama, like Nehemiah.